This is your daily scripture for February 11th. My name is Henry Loke. This is God's Feeding Station. Honored to be with you today. We continue on in the book of Exodus today. Exodus chapters 32 and 33. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So Aaron said to them, "Take off the rings of gold that are in the ears of your wives, your sons and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people took off the rings of gold that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord." And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, for your people, whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way that I commanded them. They have made for themselves a golden calf, and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it, and said, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt.' And the Lord said to Moses, "I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, in order that I may make a great nation of you." But Moses implored the Lord his God, and said, "O Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you have brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, 'With evil intent did he bring them out, to kill them in the mountains, and to consume them from the face of the earth?' Turn from your burning anger, and relent from this disaster against your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your own self, and said to them, 'I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have promised I will give to your offspring, and they shall inherit it forever.' And the Lord relented from the disaster that he had spoken of bringing on his people. Then Moses turned and went down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand, tablets that were written on both sides, on the front and on the back they were written. The tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God engraved on the tablets. When Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said to Moses, "There is a noise of war in the camp." But he said, "It is not the sound of shouting for victory, or the sound of the cry of defeat, but the sound of singing that I hear." And as soon as he came near the camp, and saw the calf and the dancing, Moses' anger burned hot, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, and broke them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf that they had made, and burned it with fire, and ground it to powder, and scattered it on the water, and made the people of Israel drink it. And Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you, that you have brought such a great sin upon them?" And Aaron said, "Let not the anger of my Lord burn hot. You know the people, that they are set on evil. For they said to me, 'Make us gods who shall go before us.' As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So I said to them, "Let any who have gold take it off." So they gave it to me, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. And when Moses saw that the people had broken loose, for Aaron had let them break loose, to the derision of their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, "Who is on the Lord's side? Come to me." And all the sons of Levi gathered around him. And he said to them, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, put your sword on your side, each of you, and go to and fro from gate to gate throughout the camp, and each of you kill his brother and his companion and his neighbor." And the sons of Levi did according to the word of Moses. And that day about 3,000 men of the people fell. And Moses said, "Today you have been ordained for the service of the Lord, each one at the cost of his son and of his brother, so that he might bestow a blessing upon you this day." The next day Moses said to the people, "You have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin." So Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Alas, this people has sinned a great sin. They have made for themselves gods of gold. But now, if you will forgive their sin, but if not, please blot me out of your book that you have written." But the Lord said to Moses, "Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. But now go, lead the people to the place about which I have spoken to you. Behold, my angel shall go before you. Nevertheless, in the day when I visit, I will visit their sin upon them." Then the Lord sent the plague on the people because they made the calf, the one that Aaron made. The Lord said to Moses, "Depart, go up from here, you and the people whom you have brought up out of the land of Egypt, to the land of which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, to your offspring I will give it. I will send an angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go up among you, lest I consume you on the way, for you are a stiff-necked people." When the people heard this disastrous word, they mourned, and no one put on his ornaments. For the Lord had said to Moses, "Say to the people of Israel, you are a stiff-necked people. If for a single moment I should go up among you, I would consume you. So now take off your ornaments, that I may know what to do with you." Therefore the people of Israel stripped themselves of the ornaments from Mount Horeb onward. Now Moses used to take the tent and pitch it outside the camp, far off from the camp, and he called it the tent of meeting. And everyone who sought the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise up, and each would stand at his tent door and watch Moses until he had gone into the tent. When Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent, and the Lord would speak with Moses. And when all the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance of the tent, all the people would rise up and worship, each at his tent door. Thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. When Moses turned again into the camp, his assistant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, would not depart from the tent. Moses said to the Lord, "See, you say to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, I know you by name, and you have also found favor in my sight. Now therefore, if I have found favor in your sight, please show me now your ways, that I may know you in order to find favor in your sight. Consider too that this nation is your people." And he said, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." And he said to him, "If your presence will not go with me, do not bring us up from here. For how shall it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people? Is it not in your going with us, so that we are distinct, I and your people, from every other people on the face of the earth?" And the Lord said to Moses, "This very thing that you have spoken I will do, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name." Moses said, "Please, show me your glory." And he said, "I will make all my goodness pass before you, and will proclaim before you my name, the Lord, and I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will show mercy on whom I will show mercy." But he said, "You cannot see my face, for man shall not see me and live." And the Lord said, "Behold, there is a place by me where you shall stand on the rock, and while my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen." Matthew 26:69 through 27:14. Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came up to him and said, "You also were with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it before them all, saying, "I do not know what you mean." And when he went out to the entrance, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." And again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." After a little while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Certainly you too are one of them, for your accent betrays you." Then he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, "I do not know the man." And immediately the rooster crowed. And Peter remembered the saying of Jesus, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And they bound him and led him away and delivered him over to Pilate the governor. Then, when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." They said, "What is that to us? See to it yourself." And throwing down the pieces of silver into the temple, he departed and went and hanged himself. But the chief priests, taking the pieces of silver, said, "It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, since it is blood money." So they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field as a burial place for strangers. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, saying, And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him on whom a price had been set by some of the sons of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, Are you the king of the Jews? Jesus said, You have said so. But when he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate said to him, Do you not hear how many things they testify against you? But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Psalm 33, 1 through 11. Shout for joy in the Lord, O you righteous. Praise benefits the upright. Give thanks to the Lord with the lyre. Make melody to him with the harp of 10 strings. Sing to him a new song. Play skillfully on the strings with loud shouts. For the word of the Lord is upright, and all his work is done in faithfulness. He loves righteousness and justice. The earth is full of the steadfast love of the Lord. By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and by the breath of his mouth all their host. He gathers the waters of the sea as a heap. He puts the deeps in storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spoke, and it came to be. He commanded, and it stood firm. The Lord brings the counsel of the nations to nothing. He frustrates the plans of the people. The counsel of the Lord stands forever, the plans of his heart to all generations. Proverbs 8:33 through 36. Hear instruction and be wise, and do not neglect it. Blessed is the one who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting beside my doors. For whoever finds me finds life, and obtains favor from the Lord. But he who fails to find me injures himself. All who hate me love death. We're going to talk about Exodus today. Mostly the things happening in Matthew are pretty self-explanatory. Peter, in his exuberance, swears to give his life for Jesus, and then when the opportunity presents itself, as Jesus prophesied, he denies him. And so the shame and the horror that brings. We have the prophecy of Jeremiah being fulfilled with the 30 pieces of silver and the potter's field being bought. And so again, it's just all these things that have been talked about and that have been prophesied about are coming true. God's plan of salvation is coming true and is coming to fruition. And so at least today, I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time on that. I want to talk about what's going on in Exodus. First off, because I think it shows a behavior trait that we all carry, and that is deny, deny, deny. And if we can point the finger at somebody else, we will. And we saw this in Genesis when they eat the fruit and they're banned, and God comes through and confronts them about it, and they're eventually banned from the garden. What happens? God confronts Adam. Adam points the finger and blames Eve. God confronts Eve. Eve blames the serpent. Right? And so, and we see this all through up to this point. It's happened on and on and on. When Cain kills Abel, Cain is like, well, am I my brother's keeper? I don't know where Abel is after he's killed him. It's this deflect and try to point the finger and get attention off ourselves for the sins that we commit. And when it's really interesting, when Moses confronts Aaron, he says, what did this people do to you that you have brought such a great sin upon them? And what does Aaron do? He's like, don't be mad at me. He's like, these people, they have a mindset on evil. And so, they said to me, make us gods who shall go before us. As for Moses, we don't know what's happened to Moses. So he said, I said, let give me your gold. And they gave it to me and I threw it in the fire, and lo and behold, miraculously out comes this calf. Like Aaron had nothing to do with fashioning it. He just took a pile of gold and dumped it in a fire, and it all kind of bubbled, and miraculously on its own, this calf just rose out of the fire on its own. And we know that's not the case, right? Because the scripture says that Aaron is the one who fashioned and made the calf for them, right? And so, it's really funny how we try to deflect. But then the bigger issue, these chickens come home to roost here pretty quickly, or this chicken comes home, or this calf comes home to roost pretty quickly, because what happens is Moses now calls the Levites to his side. And it's not for him that he does this, it's for God. He doesn't say, who's with me. He's like, okay, who is on the Lord's side, not who's on my side. And again, this is something, the noise of whatever's going on, this celebration and this party that's happening when this calf, according to Aaron, just comes up out of the fire, is so, it's like a tumult. It's this din of noise, and it reaches the mountaintop where God and Moses are conversing, and God tells Moses, look, go down, you need to deal with this. So he goes down, and the Levites come to Moses' side in the defense of God against this great sin that they've committed. And as a result of this sin, 3,000 people are killed. Now, people are going to go, see, God's he's such a jerk. He's such a wrathful God. He's so mean. And how can you say he's a loving God when he does things like this? Well, here's the deal, right? As with Sodom and Gomorrah, as with the flood, you have to understand a couple of things. One is, first and foremost, you have to understand who God is. God is holy and righteous and can have nothing to do with evil. On the heels of bringing these people out and the miracles that he's performed for them and feeding them and saving them from the Egyptians and all these things, yet they turn on him in an instant and worship a false god. And so there are consequences for this. And that does not change. There are consequences now as well. God hasn't changed. Same God. And for those who persist in sin, there will be consequences. And see, the issue is you have two choices in the world. Right? And people are making these choices daily. You either side with Satan in sin, or you side with God. There's no gray area. There's no in between. Right? You have an interest in truth and the holiness of God, or you have an interest in self and are going to chase the things that you want, and it's, you're just going to follow your own path. And so we all have to decide whose side we're on, and also have to understand, as Jesus said, the path of righteousness is narrow and few find it. And, and when we decide for God, we have to understand that we're going to be called sometimes to witness and be witnesses, or maybe be soldiers, or be missionaries, or be intercessors and pray for people. We're going to be called to do things for his kingdom, sometimes on a moment's notice. Sometimes we'll have time to prepare, other times we won't. But this is what happens, and this is how God operates. And so this sin was a very public sin. It was a big deal. And the Levites are called to go from gate to gate, just walk down the street and take care of those who committed this crime. And it's not haphazard, right? I was reading in Matthew Henry, and that's where most of this commentary is coming from today. It was pretty, in Matthew Henry's opinion, he thinks it was pretty obvious who the biggest offenders were, and those who were not repentant about what they did. And so they were pretty well known to those now of the Levites who were going to carry out the Lord's wrath here, and they just took care of business. But notice, they're basically just doing this abroad in the street. They're not going into people's tents, and that could be because the people who went to their tents are possibly on their knees repenting, in shame and understanding the gravity of the situation and the gravity of their sin, and are turning back to God and asking for forgiveness. So, these who are out on the streets and possibly not being repentant, it's the same for those today who are not repentant and who just persist in sinful ways and chasing, and it may not be these vast, great sins like this is. It could be just the sin of being more concerned with self than with God, and turning your back on salvation, which is a great sin in itself. But, you may not be worshiping another God. You're just going, nah, I'm just not interested. I'm atheist, I'm agnostic, I don't, whatever. But that puts you on Satan's side, right? Anything that you think is in a gray area, is on Satan's side. It's either of God or it's of the devil, and you have that choice to make. And so with these people, the Levites go through and take care of business on the orders of Moses, who, in my estimation, is following the orders of God. Because if we go back to it, God says, you know what, I'll just take them out. Right? They've made this golden calf, and it's a stiff-necked people, and I'm just going to take them out, and I'll make a great nation of you, and we'll move on. And if not for Moses interceding for his people, this could be a bigger catastrophe than what it turns out to be. But Moses implores God and says, look, you made this promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Israel to make them and their descendants a great nation. So what are you going to do? You're going to wipe these people out so then all the nations of the world can say, look, and this is kind of the argument that I went to at the beginning of this rant. So people can say, what a jerk you are, and what a harsh God you are. So you brought your people out of Egypt so you can just kill them in the desert. Yeah, hooray for you. And Moses presents that obviously in a much more respectful way than I just did. But I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just saying, this is what Moses is saying, right? The nations of the world are going to look on you as a harsh God if you just wipe your people out. What good is that going to do? Right? There's Psalms that say, if you strike me down, who's going to sing your praises from Sheol? Right? Who's going to sing your praises from the pit? And that's kind of what Moses is arguing here. And so Moses intercedes for his people, but yet the wrath of God is carried out. And I'm kind of with Matthew Henry on this. Not kind of. I'm with Matthew Henry on this. I think those who are of the 3,000, it's 3,000 people who don't see anything wrong with what they did. And as with Sodom and Gomorrah, they weren't going to turn, and so God dealt with them. And it's not that God is I can't use the term that comes to mind, but it's not that he's this hard-hearted, hateful, grumpy old man. No, he's holy and he's righteous, and he will deal with sin as he needs to. And so that's what we have to understand. Right? If there's no hope in turning, why infect the entire camp? Right? Sin is a disease. It's like a cancer. It needs to be cut out. It needs to be dealt with. And that's what he's doing. So, a little bit of a hard teaching today. I was kind of had a conversation with someone who listens to the feeding station yesterday about, we come off these hard teachings and then I say, and have a nice day. And I don't mean to make light of it. To me, it's just teaching, right? It's just biblical teaching. It can be a little hard to deal with at times, but I don't do it to bring us down, and I don't think it should bring you down. I think it's something that we need to learn from, right? If we have sin in our lives, as Jesus says, if you've got something, if you've got a hand or an eye or a limb that's causing you to sin, cut it off. Get it out. Get rid of it. That needs to go. And I think that's the lesson here. You have these people who sinned. They're not repentive or repenting, whatever that word is. They're not repentant, and they need to go. And as with the flood and as with Sodom and Gomorrah, it's a cancer that needs to be eradicated. And, maybe it's the 3,000 people that, that urged this whole thing and spurned this whole thing on. And so to keep the people from sinning again and from dragging them off in ways that they shouldn't be dragged off, God deals with it in this manner. I don't know the mind of God. I'm surmising. But don't let it get you down, right? Learn from it. Learn from the history. This is a great book of history and a roadmap for our lives. We need to learn from it. And but I get how sometimes I talk about these harsh things and go, okay, have a nice day, and I don't mean to do that, but it is that thing of take it as a learning experience. That's how I look at it. Learn from it and help let it help your faith to grow and your reliance on God to grow, and maybe as a warning shot across the bow too, to stay on that narrow path and not turn to the right or to the left. All right, I'm done ranting. For all of that being said, I hope you're having a great day, and thanks for hanging out and taking some time out of your day to listen to me rant and rave. So have a great day, and God willing, we'll talk again tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.